going on, guys? Welcome back to the Real Talk with Real Estate Investor Show. Today we have a special guest. I think it's going to be one of our best shows so far because today our guest is a heavyweight champion in the real estate world. And I have the honor to introduce you guys to Ken Clothier. He is the president and CEO of the Real Estate Worldwide, and he operates a multi-million-dollar series of internet marketing brands called Real Market Experts. He's a bestseller author, and he is one of the best in the business. And we're glad to have you here, Ken, today. I'm sure our group is going to be really excited because I know you're going to bring a lot of knowledge and a lot of stuff that it can help them in their business. So welcome, man.
Hey, man, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here. Let's do this.
We're so happy to have you here, Kent. You know, obviously you've done some big things and are doing some big things here in the real estate industry. And, you know, one of the things that folks always want to know is, you know, how in the world did all of this get started? You know, how did you get into the business?
Yeah, so I got an interesting story. I started, you know, I was raised by an entrepreneurial father. And so I was raised in the grocery industry of all things. And so my father owned grocery stores and convenience stores my whole life right there in Dallas. And when I was 17, I started a business with him that was an arbitrage business where we basically flip truckloads of groceries of all things, right? And that business became very, very successful. And through my 20s, we took a little company that was, you know, it ended up being based out of Memphis, Tennessee. We took a little company based out of Memphis, Tennessee. And by the time I was 30, it was, had been moved to South Florida, Boca Raton, Florida, to be specific. And was doing roughly about $2 billion a year, right? So my 20s were very, very different than most people's 20s. And
no doubt.
You know, ironically, the way I got to Florida was that our company out of Memphis had been purchased, and they moved me down there when I was 25. I took over the bigger operation and kind of blew it all up, and got into a run-in right after I turned 30 years old. Got into a run-in with the guys that owned the company, because I no longer owned, you know, I had equity, although I was building it, and although I was the head guy there, I didn't really own anything, and ended up walking out of there when I was 30. And over the course of a couple of years, proceeded to lose literally everything I had worked for, right? And it was a devastating blow to me. But luckily, it kind of led me into a place where all the experience, everything I'd ever had before in the grocery industry, I could no longer count on, because I burnt every bridge on the way down and basically destroyed everything I'd ever worked for. And so I was kind of left to figure out what to do next. And where I landed was at one of those late night infomercial, watching a seminar, watching a webinar, or watching an infomercial, ended up at a seminar. And that's how I found wholesaling. I'd never even heard of what you know, even wholesaling was. This was back in 2000, and at the end of 2002. And Russ Whitney was the program. And I go out and figure it out and start going and doing a few deals, and got really excited about it. And then quickly, over the course of 2 or 3 years, figured out that as long as I was transacting, as long as I was in the weeds, doing it every single day, I didn't really own a business, right, man? I owned a job. It was the second I took my foot off the gas, the whole thing stopped. And so I got really, really passionate about turning it into a business, because I had seen the power of that before, right? You know, in my 20s, and started putting automation and systems and processes in place. And before you knew it, we were flipping 300 properties a year, and then it was 400, then it was 500. It just kind of blew up, and now it's 900 properties a year. We've done, you know, over 6,000 transactions, and still do it every single day now in 7 markets. And so it's it all started because I got pissed off and walked out, and luckily that ended up working out for me.
No doubt. You know, and I think that's how a lot of folks get started in the industry, is that whatever, some sort of life happened before, you know, leading up to that point, and it's like, okay, well, what now? Or, you know, life's just, you know, going wrong, and it's like, man, I need to do something different to really get going. And so, you know, that's how I kind of got started as well. You know, just enough's enough. I had no choice but to figure something else out. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been in business a long time, and I can tell you some of the best decisions you can ever make are in the moment, when your backup's against the wall and you really have no choice but either to, you know, it's either move ahead or die. I mean, I don't want to be melodramatic about it, but it's quite frankly, it gets right down to that. Either, you know, what is the alternative? Either you need to push ahead and go for it, or just get out of the way, right? And stop talking about it. And so that's, luckily I got put in that spot. I mean, ironically, when I was in that spot, it was the worst time of my life. Don't kid yourself.
Sure.
But I look back on it right now, obviously very fondly. I live an amazing life, which would have never taken place if, that day, March 14th of 2000 hadn't happened when I walked out of there.
No doubt.
That's awesome.
And I think, just like you said, that the adversity was there and you pushed through. Tell us a little bit about, how things kind of, obviously you jumped into the industry, you went to a course and, they probably, kind of taught you, some of the traditional wholesaling techniques. Was there something in particular that you were using back then to really scale your business fast?
Well, so, I use a concept that's called reverse wholesaling. And that concept that I brought into real estate was how I was successful in the previous life, right? Nobody had ever done that in real estate prior to then. But, when I look back in my grocery industry, what made me really, really successful was kind of starting with the end in mind, starting with our buyers and understanding exactly what they wanted. And then we just go create that rather than us fighting it out. And basically in that business, we were all kind of fighting over the exact same deals, right? Day in and day out. And so when I took over that company, we were doing $800 million a year, and inside of less than 3 years, we were doing 1.8 billion. So it's literally $1 billion a year in sales growth by just flipping the model.
Right.
And so when I got into the grocery industry, when I got into the real estate industry, after about, I don't know, probably 3 years, kind of the light bulb went off, right? And, why could I not do the exact same thing here? And I really started getting dialed in on exactly how to make that happen. And it really took me until probably 2008 before I really had it perfected. And the whole concept was at the time was go and figure out who all of the cash buyers were, right? Because they're going to buy multiple properties. They're going to be people that don't have to deal with the banks. There's no headaches. I just want to deal with people that can make this easy for me. I'm trying to create McDonald's, right? How can I get a predictable outcome over and over and over and over again? And so it really starts with the customer, understanding exactly what they want, where they want it, et cetera. And so, there were no cash buyer databases back then. It didn't happen, right? So basically,
Right.
the only way that I knew to do it was to go down to the courthouse and go look through the all the recorded deeds and transactions from the week before, and just through the process of elimination, look at the ones where a mortgage wasn't recorded. And, by default, if a mortgage or a lien or a prom note was not recorded against that transaction, then clearly they paid cash for it. And so we would just build a database inside of a spreadsheet of all of those cash buyers, and then turn around and start marketing to them, start, trying to figure out how to get the phones ringing from those people. And, through that process, we really, really got good at building quality relationships with cash buyers, which made everything we were doing on the other side infinitely easier. Because
Sure.
Now instead of trying to blanket an entire county or an entire city with any kind of marketing, we were down there being very, very strategic. We were just going after the exact types of deals that we knew that our customers wanted to buy from us, and just kind of backing into the deals over and over and over again. And so that's how we took it to scale, right? Trying to scale a business, especially in the real estate, transaction by transaction, is almost impossible, in my opinion, right? You have to have a systematic approach, and you have to try to mitigate as much of the variables as you can. And so the easiest way to do that is to clearly understand what a buyer wants and the neighborhood they want to buy it in, what price they want to pay, how much cash they have, when can they close on the deal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just build that stable of 10 or 12 of those people. And we would just feed that beast, at a voracious pace, just constantly just go get it under contract, flip the contract as fast as we could. And so instead of us trying to do 10 or 20 deals a year, suddenly we were able to do 200 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, when the business was scaling at that rate, if you think about it, that was at the point where the recession kicked in. And so ironically, kind of what landed me in the info space and the education and software space was that while everybody else was just the carnage was coming in and they were all getting wiped out, our business was taking off. And so people were like, what in the hell are you doing? How is this even possible? And
Right.
then we started to reveal how we were doing it.
Man, that's incredible.
So you mentioned something very important when you started and after you filmed the grocery business. You were talking about automation system and processes. Can you expand a little bit more on that? Because I believe that a lot of business owners and a lot of people in this industry and any other industry, they don't pay attention to how important it is to automate and have a process and system in place in order for you to build a successful business. So can you?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, if you just go back to the comment I made before, right? Most people in this business, and then quite frankly, most people that are watching this today, even if they're doing, a dozen, 20 deals a year, whatever it is, right? If they understand, they're still in a transactional business. They basically own a job. They don't own a business. We all con ourselves into believing it's a business, but it's real easy to see it's a business, and it's just leave.
Mm-hmm.
Go away for 2 months and come back. And if the money's still coming into your account, and you've got more money in your account when you get back than when you left, then you probably have a business. Anything short of that, your ass owns a job. It's that simple. And so ironically, we all get into this for freedom. We all start businesses believing we're going to become financially free and we're going to make our dreams come true. And then we end up strapping ourselves right up against to a job and backing ourselves into a corner where the entire thing is dependent upon us. So the idea there is that, my motivation in turning it into a business is that, as I started this, I got remarried and I had a new child on the way. And I the big epiphany was that I'm not going to be able to spend any time with it because I can't, I've put myself in a situation where everything is dependent upon me. And so when you get really serious and really dialed in on that, man, I just actually want the freedom that I started this whole thing, then you become really passionate about firing yourself as often as you can. That's the idea. You got to make it a game.
Right.
I want the option to do everything in the business. And there's a big thing in, having the option of doing it versus being forced to do it are two completely different things, right? I love what I do. I love hanging out. But man, if I can put systems in place where somebody can step in and follow it step by step by step and create the exact same outcome, that now I have the option of showing up, right? That's the game. And then, the first thing is to put the process in place. Then how much of that can you automate, which has never been easier than right now. In the history of man, it has never been easier to automate processes than right now. I mean, just think about that. When I got in the business, there was no, literally when I got in the business, YouTube didn't exist, Facebook didn't exist, social media didn't, none of that stuff existed, right? Our company was the very first to go and create vacant property databases, cash buyer databases, private lender databases, and all these systems that we all take for granted today. They're kind of right at our fingertips. But literally, we were the very first to create all of that. And the reason we created it is because we needed that automation inside of our business. And then ultimately we brought it out to the public. You just have to get really, really passionate about giving yourself the option of having to do the task. And it's one thing at a time. All right. So how do you automate the acquisition process? Well, clearly you've got to hire somebody. Clearly you have to document. But now, how hard is it today to walk around? We're all walking around with a video camera in our pocket, and we can all load up training videos right to a private YouTube channel or a private Facebook group. You can literally create an entire training center for free, right? None of that existed before. So all the excuses of, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to train people. I don't know how to, those are just, that is just nonsense. That's just the story we tell ourselves and that inevitably kind of keeps us trapped. But the reality of it is that if you're really passionate about it, and there is a lot of wisdom floating around in all of our heads, that if you will just take the time to document it, and it's as easy as setting up a video camera in front of you and going through the process, verbalize it, even when you can do screen capture on your monitor. I go look up, this is the way I comp a property, this is the way I make an offer, here's the way I type the contract, all of that stuff can be recorded. You can go load that up to, rev.com and have the entire video transcribed and load it into a WordPress site, load it into Facebook, whatever. You can have an entire training done on acquisitions, dispositions, and like this. So the need for it is that, back to your original question, if you don't do it, you will always own a job. It's that simple. And without systems and automation and tools and processes, you'll always own a job. I don't know how to say it any better than that.
And that's right. And I would like to kind of piggyback on that a little bit from what you've got going on currently. Like I said before, I think there's a lot of folks in this group, 17,000 of them, that either are looking to get in the industry, or they're already in the industry now and they're looking to get to that next level. And a lot of times what separates the two, I guess, or getting to that next step is, taking action and really, I think a lot of folks get caught up in that analysis by paralysis type thing, and wanting to be the expert and so forth. I know that, again, one of the big things that, your motto is the time is now, let's go, basically. Mm-hmm. You kind of tell us a little bit more about that, and maybe what advice you might give to some folks that are either, they've spent years of education, they probably know whatever that they need to know to go out there, probably much more than that, or, people that are just hesitant out of fear, to go out there and do it. What advice might you be able to give to those folks, and talk a little bit more about the times now?
Yeah, well, I say this a lot, and I basically, one of the things I say is that, I would much rather prefer, give me ignorance on fire rather than knowledge on ice, right? This industry,
oh man, that's deep.
This industry is filled with overeducated, broke people. And what I mean by that is that there is no amount of education that you can get that is actually going to train you for what it's like to get in the trenches. I have a really good friend, a guy by the name of Pat Precourt, and he and I were talking about this not too long ago. And, he's an MMA fighter. He's not professional, but he's in the ring literally multiple times a week, and loves to go in there and just get hit in the face, which you just think about that mentality, right? I mean, of like actually wanting to go get hit in the face.
Sure.
And it blows my mind, but it is a great analogy for this business, right? Because in his mind, when he's in the ring and he's sparring and he's doing all this kind of stuff, he's improving, he's getting better, he's refining his skills, he's becoming a better version of himself. And so, if I sat here today and told you guys, man, I've read every book there is to read on MMA, and I have watched 1,000 hours of cage fights, and I have been to seminar after seminar on how to cage fight, I think I'm ready to go into the ring. Although I've never been in the ring, I think I know what I'm doing. You guys would look at me like I'm crazy. Like, sure. Dude, you've never actually, what are you talking about, right? But people believe that in our business all the time, which is, it's just so crazy to me that you've got, I've watched videos, I've read books, I've been in podcasts, I've done all this stuff. And I think, I got a lot of education. I'm just not sure what to do. Well, you got to get in the ring.
That's right.
Right. The only way you're going to get better is you've got to get in the ring, and you got to walk into that ring. And if I told any of you guys that I'm going to walk into the ring and I don't think I'm going to get hit, then you would also think I'm crazy. And so, I think what people do is they get trapped. I know what they do. I've literally helped tens of thousands of people. I'll tell you exactly what they do. They get trapped believing that, are having a fear of falling down, of failure, of the buyer might know more than they do, or the seller might know, whatever the story is that they're telling themselves. And without understanding that that's all the good stuff, the struggle, the grind, the getting hit, the, getting knocked down, fighting through those moments, taking on that fear, embracing it, pushing through it, is all the good stuff. That's where literally all the magic happens. And that through those processes, you get better. And you get, that you have to expect to fail. I mean, we are arguably some of the most successful guys out there in the industry, right? And I can tell you that we're no different than anybody else. We mail, for every 100,000 mail pieces we mail, we get at best a 1% response rate, just like everybody else, right? It takes us 20 prospects to do a deal, one deal. So if anybody's watching this, think about this for a second. If it takes 20 prospects, 20 conversations to actually put a deal together, that means I'm right. My success rate is 5%. Say it a different way. I literally fail 95% of the time and I'm considered a rock star in the industry. So who are you as a brand new investor, as somebody's coming out, to believe that you're going to walk in here and not go through the, go through the hit, not that you're not going to quote unquote fail 95% of the time or get hit. It's just, it's a ridiculous way of setting yourself up for failure. And ultimately the reason why people do that is because they got some story playing in their head that is they are making real, right? And so I'll share a couple things with you guys, is that you have to be very, very careful of the language that's coming out of your mouth, because you are always listening, right? And so when you tell yourself that you can't do this or can't do that, you will make that real, I promise you. Now, if you change just the word can't to I choose not to, that doesn't feel very good. And that suddenly changes the whole internal conversation. Like, I can't go on the seller appointment, or I choose not to do that. And say it another way, I'm choosing to put my dreams on hold right now. When you start speaking to yourself like that, that doesn't feel good, and you will start taking different actions. It doesn't, it feels very comfortable to kind of wrap ourselves in this little blanket of mediocrity and just tell ourselves that success is elusive, and it's just not. I'm a redneck from Dallas, Texas, man. If I can do this, anybody could do this, right? I don't deserve any of what I've worked for. But I didn't go to college. I don't know any more than anybody else. There's just nobody that's going to outwork me, and I'm willing to take the hits in order to get there. And that's what it takes. Give me the guy or girl that is just naive and doesn't believe that they can fail, and they're ready to run through walls, and you can take that energy and channel it and make them into a rock star, versus the person that's been to 45 seminars, watched 145 videos, read 97 books, and never done anything. They're getting ready to fix into start to do one thing someday. That's just, that person is trapped by what's going on in their heads. And the last thing I'll share with you on that is where, as you mentioned, the time is now, is that the easiest way I know to break free of that is to remind yourself that that nothing's promised, right? I've had my mentor pass away while I'm holding his hand. My wife and I were in a emergency landing where we were on a plane where we were told to brace for impact as the plane was about to crash. I ended up losing a $1.8 billion a year business and having to start completely over. I promise you, things can change very, very quickly. Do not take for granted the time that you have right now on this planet.
That's right.
The easiest thing I can tell anybody on here to do is to go and just actually calculate how many days you have left on the planet. If you're a man, go right up on the board, on a whiteboard, the number 78. If you're a woman in America, go right up 82 and subtract your age from that, your current age, and then go multiply that times 365. And then statistically speaking, that's how many days you have left on the planet. And every single day when you come in, just knock another one of those off, right? Every day, because it never stops, right? And when you get a very good visual and understand how, when the clock is ticking on your ass and it is counting down, and I don't care who you are, that number is too small. For the right people, it'll make you move, right? But to act like to act like you got time is just, to me, the most reckless and irresponsible thing you could ever do. For God's sake, it's tattooed on my arm, on my wrist, it's all over my office. I believe passionately that the time is now. Like, you have to go do something today, because it could all be gone like that.
I agree 100%. And I actually went and did the same thing. I got a little tattoo here with a clock, and it represents the time that's on there is the time that I was born, and the clock is on fire constantly. And that's our life. We've got to act on it, because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. And, when I realized that, several years back, things started to change. And, the old saying goes, change your mind, change your life. And I truly believe that. And once you start believing that you're not guaranteed or promised the next day, you start acting accordingly.
100%, brother. That to me is the single biggest epiphany that ever happened to me. I've been there, literally been there, when you think you can do no wrong, right? At 30 years old, making millions and millions of dollars, believing you're invincible, massive company, nothing but accolades, had never failed ever in business or in life, and or in business, I should say, and built an entire business at the expense of my family, my son, my high school sweetheart that I ended up getting a divorce from. Basically, I was all in on business, and in the blink of an eye, it was gone. Right? I mean, I walked out, boom, gone, and spent 2 years chasing after it and just chased it all the way down. And my entire life was different 22 months later. And when I down at the bottom and was left with nothing, it was very humbling to realize that, again, there's no point in sitting around putting off or building something that isn't exactly what you want it to do. Like literally lay out, this is what I want my life to look like on one side of the board. This is where it is. And that gap in between is all the good stuff. And,
Sure.
like I said earlier, there's never been a better time, because getting that information to fill that gap and on what the action has never been easier.
Totally.
You're 100% right. Absolutely. And that's one of the techniques that I teach in my own course and in my own program is, things have changed, but there's no shortage of deals out there. There's still a ton of houses out there. The avenue might be a little bit different because a lot of folks are fishing in the same pond still these days, doing a lot of the traditional stuff. But those houses are still there. People are still issues where they need to sell. It's just the only thing that's keeping you from about that and doing that is just taking some action, going up there and finding them, connecting the dots and putting it together. And, I think a lot of folks just are fearful of that or think that it's too good to be true. But I tell you what, every time somebody thinks it's too good to be true, there's somebody else that pops up that's making it happen.
Well, yeah, and when I talk to people that kind of are thinking like that, it's real easy. Facts are facts. They're indisputable, right? I mean, and separating fact from fiction is the easiest way to get kind of your butt in gear. You can go into any market right now, whether you're using our system or other systems, and you can clearly see all the cash transactions that are happening, right? And so the only way somebody's buying thousands of houses in the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex, just in the last month and paying all cash is somebody was selling them, right? And who cares what all the competition looks like? The bottom line is most people watching this, if they did 1 or 2 deals a month, it's life-changing money for them, right? It's
right.
$120,000 to $250,000. When there were, 2,000 cash transactions that happened in Dallas and Denton and Tarrant County just last month, and you're trying to do 1, stop talking to me about what are we talking about? Stop talking to me about competition. Stop talking to me about all this other support. That's the story going on in your head. Keep, that little blanket mediocrity I was talking about. Dude, you're trying to do 1.
That's right.
2,000 last month, right? Get it in gear and get going. And again, when you deal with this outer level of just, again, crap, and you kind of versus getting down into the bottom and saying, these are the facts, it starts to really enable the right people to understand, look, all that is just noise. You're trying to do 1 out of 2,000 every month. Is that possible? Can you get 1? I mean, it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. And of course you can. I mean, dude, the market right now, I was just talking on a radio show a couple days ago, and I was sharing with them, this year alone, there will be $162 billion just in cash transactions in the United States on single family homes. 162 billion. Right?
That's a whole lot.
Right? It's like, okay, like everybody just calm down. Like most people watching this are trying to get their hands on a half a dozen, maybe 40 deals, right? And it would change their lives. In the big picture, it's nothing. Just go. Like nobody cares. You're not that important. Just go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's that conversation in your head, like you were saying, that's life changing. Instead of asking yourself, ask yourself if you're choosing to do it or not. That's definitely. That's something that I will start implementing right away too, because that's conversation.
Yeah, and what happens is the way to think about it is, and I had a mentor tell me this a long time ago, and I'll never forget it. It's a lack of, it's never a lack of resources. People tell you that, and they'll tell you, I don't have time, or I don't have money, or whatever it is, don't have the knowledge, whatever. So those are all resources. But it's never that. It's a lack of resourcefulness. It is somebody that tells themselves that, and kind of again that back to that story, they're trapped and they can't expand their vision. Like, well, what would I do if I had to get money? What would I do if I had to do this or if I had to do that? Becoming resourceful to create those opportunities, whether that's coming into, watching podcasts like this or connecting with people in your group or whatever the case may be, right? If you can get resourceful, there's a way to get to the solution. But when you just keep telling yourself you can't, that's just the cop out, right? That's all that is. And because, I had a mentor do this to me a long time ago, and it really proved a very, very valuable point to me. He and I were doing a live event together. And at the time we were talking to people about our mentorship program, which was basically, I want to say it was probably $10,000 or $15,000. This was probably 10 years ago. And to everybody in that room, there were several hundred people in the room, $10,000 or $15,000 was a ton of money, right? It was like, oh my God, how am I going to invest $10,000 or $15,000 to get good at this? And then I'll be damned if he didn't drive a Ferrari, California, out on the stage, right? And he drove it out on the stage. I'm like, okay, now how many of you, if I told you, if you bring me a check for $10,000 in the next 24 hours, you can buy this $300,000 car? And literally every hand goes up.
Sure.
Right? Because it's very visual. They can see it, right? Everybody in the room would get really resourceful for to get up with 10 grand when they can see a $300,000 car. Most people can't get resourceful for whatever it is, $10,000 or whatever it is, to change their life because it's less tangible, right? And so that's the trick. The mind, you just got to exercise becoming resourceful and understand what you're really fighting for here is to change your life.
That's right. And
Absolutely.
trust the process. Absolutely. Put in the work, trust the process, and know that, hey, look, you're going to have those no's. You're going to have those deals that fall apart. You're going to have all these different things, along the way. But that one yes, on a given month, that's 10 grand. Folks are not making 10 grand on a given month. And,
right.
And it's not even, I wouldn't even say that it's necessarily a ton of work, but trust the process, put in the time and every single day, day in and day out, and know that, hey, if I keep doing this, it's going to lead to something.
Absolutely, bro. I mean, that's what it is. It is all about, you cannot put a timeline on it. We all know people that got their first deal in the first few weeks, and we know people that took them a year.
Sure.
And everywhere in between. There is no timeline on it. What we all definitely know is that the work is what matters. You just continue to be consistent and diligent, and you fall in love with the process, not with the outcome. And when you do that, you'll get there. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when.
Sure.
You have to fall in love with the process. You gotta, like the analogy I used earlier, and you gotta love walking in the ring and getting punched in the face. And when you just fall in love with the grind and the struggle and all of that, then it becomes, that's all the good stuff. That's the good stuff.
That's right. So let's say that somebody is ready to rock. They're mentally saying, hey, look, I'm going to go out there and crush it. I want to get my first deal. What would you recommend for somebody that's starting out that maybe doesn't have a whole lot of money, a whole lot of resources? What would you recommend would be the best technique to use to go out there and start, putting together a process to get that first deal?
Well, again, this is the hustler way to get it done, right? So this is not building a business, and this is not anything that you would be able to do consistently and actually run with. But one of the things that I've instructed people that just were broke and needed to get in the game and go generate income real fast and get going, the easiest way to do that is to go into any city, any Craigslist, and go to the real estate section and just go under there and search on keywords of must sell, all cash, cash offers only, et cetera, right? And pull up all those properties. Those are all wholesalers selling deals. That's who those are, right? Sure. And so talk to those wholesalers, find out what the situation is on the property, find out, obviously they don't know what the hell they're doing, and they're not selling, they don't have cash buyers. That's why they're putting the property on Craigslist. And so quickly, if the property is still available, literally that day, go grab a handful of bandit signs and a marker and the stakes, and go at the main intersections around that piece of property, go put up the bandit signs, must sell, all cash, 3-2, you know, whatever it is, $50,000 and with your phone number on it. Therefore, what you are effectively doing right there, you know, there's a property in the neighborhood that can be sold all cash by a wholesaler. They're crappy at marketing. They're going out and putting stuff on Craigslist. You're surrounding the area with bandit signs at major intersections. The only people that are going to call on those deals are cash off. I mean, it clearly says are people that want to pay cash. You are effectively right there creating a situation where you can co-wholesale a deal. You've got a cash buyer that will pay your markup. You said you got it on the sign at $60,000. Your wholesaler is trying to sell it for $55,000. You get this buyer, you come in and get a deal closed, and it literally cost you nothing except a little bit of time.
That is the most fire technique I've ever heard anybody say, you know, for starting off. I surely appreciate you saying that, because I've never heard it mentioned like that before. You know, most of the folks will say, well, yeah, take off down the street and, you know, go driving for dollars, you know, just like everybody does, or, you know, or just randomly start, you know, without any strategy in place or anything like that, start putting out bandit signs. What you just gave, man, that's incredible. For the folks that are listening, I really hope you took note on that, because boy, that is some
it's a little gangster, but at the end of the day, it will create the cash and the opportunities right now.
Sure.
And by virtue of doing that, you're clearly creating a cash buyer list, and you're creating a relationship with a wholesaler right there. And that's how you get money going. It's not a long-term strategy, but that is clearly how you can get money going and become resourceful.
That's great, man. So tell us more about your education training platform that you have. You have over 60,000 active users at this point, right?
Correct.
This
so
is
yeah. Yeah. So you know, a little bit of history. When I got started in the business, like I said, we were doing all the data stuff just manually. And so through 2008, 2009, and kind of ever since then, we started really building that into a software platform that we now call Smart. So when I first started it was called Find Cash Buyers Now. And then we had Find Private Lenders Now and Find Motivated Sellers Now. They were 3 different programs depending on what you needed to do. And so over the course of the last few years, we combined them all and called it our Smart program. And so, you know, that's a software platform to generate leads and generate lists and do direct mail and do phone dialing. That basically connects dots for people, right? Here's all the buyers, here's all the sellers, just kind of go. Well, then the next logical step after that is I had never actually educated anybody on what I was doing, right? I mean, I had talked about it a lot, and I had talked about it from stage and what have you, and at our live events, but I never slowed down to put it into actual courses. And so about 3 or 4 years, well, maybe 3 years ago, I hired a couple PhDs, and they came in and effectively took all of our education, everything that we were doing, and turned it into training courses, right? And these are all certification courses where it was all designed with what's called an ISD format, which is basically the same way you take a college course online, where you cannot proceed until, you know, foundational learning, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can't proceed forward until you have comprehension of what you've just learned. And the two systems kind of are tied together. So when you're going through, for instance, like our wholesaling course, as you're moving through, you know, I think there's 21 modules in there. As you're moving through it, the system is forcing you to go back into our Smart software and create lists and instigate marketing, right? So it's the two are talking to each other to make sure that not only you're comprehending, but you're taking action. And so by the time you get through that course, which takes, you know, less than a month, you've got your direct mail campaigns out. You've got your seller scripts and buyer scripts. You're already talking to people. And so it's a really, it's been a game changer for us. More importantly, it's been a game changer for our students who've had a ton of success doing it. And so that was kind of the jumping off point. From there, we started we put 10 more courses in there, whether it's rehabbing or raising private money or actually becoming a private money lender or building your teams or hiring virtual assistants. I mean, they're all in there, right? There's a ton of stuff in there, and we call it our REWW Academy. You know, it's what I never wanted to be in this business. So, you know, be really clear. I got really good at buying and selling houses, and we still are. I got really passionate about when we started being able to connect dots for people really quickly, kind of collapsing time for them. What would take people a long time to figure out or put together, going and doing it the manual way to find buyers or the manual way to find vacants or whatever the case may be. When we were able to compress time for them and then ultimately really educate them and train them on it and hold them accountable for it, that became very, very exciting for me. And to your point, that's why tens of thousands of people have now taken it and gone through it and continue to use it every month, because it's I would argue it's some of the best education out there, and it is life-changing. If you will go do it, I mean, again, it is not a matter of if it works, it's just a matter of when it will work for you.
Sure.
Right.
And how do folks find out more about that program?
They can go to real estate, or they can go to REWW.com, realestateworldwide.com. So REWW.com, or they can hit me up on Facebook, I'm not hard to find on Facebook or on Instagram at Kent Clothier. Be happy to point them in the right directions, or if they can call our office, whatever, right? I mean, we are not one of those companies that is hard selling anybody out there at all. We don't have to. It's one of those that if you want to know, if you just want the information hard and raw and uncut, we're just going to give it to you straight, right? We're not going to sit here and blow sunshine. We're going to tell you exactly what you need to do, and if you'll do it, you will get the outcome you're looking for.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'll tell you, and I know we're kind of crunched on time here, but one of the questions that our audience always wants to know is, a lot of them are, they've got families, they've got kids and things like that, and they struggle with the work-life balance. I know that you're a family man as well. Is there any advice that you might be able to give to somebody that's using that, I wouldn't say so much as a crutch, but feels like that there's not enough time to make both work effectively? What advice might you be able to give?
Well, I think you just nailed it, right? I mean, I think that again, going back to what we've touched on a couple times here, that's just the story, the BS story you tell yourself. What you should do, everybody that's watching this, the easiest way to make family the priority is very simple. Is you sit down and you write out what your perfect day is, right? Literally what perfection looks like. If you had no geographical, monetary, if you had literally nothing inhibiting you at all, what does perfection look like? And what you will find when you go through that exercise is very rarely does perfection look like, if I had to live the exact same day over and over and over and over again. I've never heard anybody say, well, I woke up at 5 a.m. and I went to the office and I flipped 2 houses that day. I mean, if that is your perfect day, you need to check yourself, right?
Right.
Perfection is almost always about, well, I get the opportunity to spend time with my family or my friends, or travel the world, or experience life, collect moments. I'm not collecting crap, I'm collecting moments, right? And if that is true, then you have to design a business from the very beginning that helps you to create perfection, which was back to what we talked about earlier, is that getting into the rat race and the hustle and running and not putting systems and automation and things in place that are just sucking time out of you and sucking you and drawing you further away from perfection is a problem. You cannot, but what happens is people get they're chasing money and they get so consumed with running and trying to pay the bills, which I clearly understand, man. We've all been there, right? Trying to get it done, trying to go, that they lose sight of what they really are trying to get out of life. And so the idea is that, something very tactical that you can do, that's very kind of high level strategic, but something very tactical is what's called time blocking. The most successful people in the world still only get 24 hours in a day. Let's just be, go look at Elon Musk, right? This is a guy that's, we all know him. We all heard of him. We all know what he's doing. And here he is building 2 multi-billion-dollar companies. Literally was just announced yesterday that now Tesla is worth more than General Motors and Ford, right?
Man,
that's insane. Yeah.
Right?
I know, right?
Just by the way, him doing at the same time he's doing that, he's building SpaceX and he's building the burrowing company, and it was Hyperloop and right? How does a guy like that perform well, they have a very, very different perception of time. That's how it's done, right? They have an unbelievably healthy respect for time. They manage it to the minute. So I can tell you, when I wake up in the morning, I get up between 4 and 6, depending on the day. On my calendar, it literally says, right, this is family time. This is gym time. This is breakfast with my kids. This is walking my kids to school. This is driving my other daughter to school. This is, it is every minute of my day is laid out. You guys, we wanted to do this podcast and I was like, just schedule it with Kathleen, right? So I have somebody, I have two people that manage my calendar in addition to me. Every minute is managed. because I want to be hyper productive, but it's shocking how much time we waste that we could be spending with our families and collecting moments,
Sure.
doing all this other stuff, because we sit at the sit on our phone on social media or in the news or whatever the case may be, just pissing away time that if you just managed it better, you'd be shocked at how productive you can actually be. So put all the big stuff on the calendar first. The biggest stuff is family. Date night with my wife, date night with my husband, family weekends away with my kids, whatever it is. Put all the big stuff on the calendar. And what time do you waking up? When are you going to the gym? When is you time? Where you just have your alone time to read and meditate so that you don't ever resent your kids or resent your family. Get it all on the calendar. And then when all of that is done, then go fill in everything else. Don't ever be a slave to the phone. Don't ever be a slave to the schedule. Don't ever be a slave to the transaction, right? You are not that freaking important. I promise you that if you'll just schedule like that, you're training everybody around you on how to respect your time, and the world will just fall in line. I mean, it's like water. It's looking for the path of least resistance. But if you don't guide it at all, and you just kind of take the day as it comes, and you're running around like a fireman, just putting out, the very first thing you do is pick up the phone and what's going on, and oh my God, okay, checking the email. Like I do not check the email before noon, ever. I mean, it's a rule, because I know that if I check email, then I'll go start running down rabbit holes, right? So my
Makes
day,
sense.
literally,
Absolutely.
never check an email before 12 o'clock. If it's an emergency, somebody knows to pick up the phone and call me, but I'm not running around like an idiot, right? So that, it just takes things like that. But it all goes back to the very thing that we talked about over and over. Having a very healthy respect for time and making the most of every minute of it and being very disciplined about it is how you create, enough room in your life to have everything in life you want. Family, church, community, charity, traveling the world, all that stuff is possible. Every successful person does it. So why is it any different for you? You're not that unique. You just have to actually plan it.
Right. Awesome. That's great advice, man. I really appreciate all the knowledge that you have shared with us today, man. I think, you have just impact my life, and I'm sure the people watching these also have a huge impact, because everything you say is very eye-opening, and I really appreciate that. And I'm sure our audience are going to appreciate that too, like remove all the excuses, just execute and get the ball rolling, because if not, you're never going to get out of the hole, right?
That's right. There's only one way out.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate it. So you also have your book. I know that it's called Reverse Wholesaling, right? So people, I guess they can find it on Amazon and
correct.
Order it from your website. Yeah, we already posted your website and the Ken Clothier website too, so they can find you, get in contact with you if they are interested in getting in your course, whatever it is. But I don't know if you have any other questions, Trevor.
I sure don't, man. I just want to say thanks again for joining us. I know that you're a busy man and you've got a lot going on, so taking a little bit of time out of your day to share, the wealth of knowledge and experience with our audience, boy, it not only means a lot to me and Pedro, but to our audience as well. So we're very appreciative.
Of course, man. My pleasure, man. Happy to share.
Definitely.
Yeah,
and
great,
I guess
really
we'll see you at the $1 Million Mastermind here in a few months too, right?
Oh yeah,
you will. I will be there, front and center.
Awesome.
Yeah, that will be.
Look forward to meeting you in person. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you in a couple months.
All right, guys. Take care. Peace.
Take care.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.